from one video where we should just trust people in one scenario, the NHS and its partnerships. But let's go into another video with another person we should apparently trust. Let's have a look at the Home Secretary in action.
Well, are you confident that the Met, specifically the Met in terms of the London protests, is doing everything it can to enforce the law robustly enough? Or do you think that certain regulations around extremism and terrorism need to be changed or modified, as the Met Commissioner seems to be suggesting might need to happen?
Well, first of all, let me explain what we've seen over the last few weekends. We've seen now tens of thousands of people take to the streets following the massacre of Jewish people, the single largest loss of Jewish life since the Holocaust, chanting for the erasure of Israel from the map. To my mind, there's only one way to describe those marches. They are hate marches. Now, secondly, the police and the Crown Prosecution Service are operationally independent. So it's not for me to provide a running commentary on the specific legal decisions that they are making in real time on the ground. But what the police have made clear is that they are concerned that there's a large number of bad actors who are deliberately operating beneath the criminal threshold in a way which you or I, or the vast majority of British people, would consider to be utterly odious. Now, we keep our laws under review, and if there is a need to change the law, just as we did in relation to Just Stop Oil protests last year, I will not hesitate to act.
You referenced chanting. Is it your view that the chant that we hear at some of those protests, from the river to the sea, that one, is anti-Semitic in all contexts, and do you think people should be being arrested for chanting that?
As I said, I'm not going to get into matters which are operationally independent for the police and the Crown Prosecution Service. They need to make those decisions based on the facts and the evidence as they see them. But I have made my views clear. These are hate marches, and the police must take a zero-tolerance approach to anti-Semitism.
Well, no messing there. Hate marches, and we must deal with anti-Semitism. Alex, if you were able to hear that video clip, what's your thoughts? I'm just going to add, I dislike the fact that we have these little secret meetings, then we're going to do something to put the boot further on the public in UK, but we don't want to talk about it. But what was your own take?
For full disclosure, I moved in the same circles as Suella, she was then Fernandez at St John's College, Cambridge. She was in the Conservative Association together with my roommate. I wasn't a member of it, but she's well spoken of. And I think that you could say that there's a fear and a kind of imperative driving her to say this. She's well regarded as a legal mind. And she said twice, she's given, for foreign viewers who won't know the constitutional context, she's given the absolutely correct procedure, which is that the chief constables, who at law are magistrates, run the police, run the constabularies in the counties independently, and that the Home Office can only coordinate and guide, the same as the sentencing guidelines for the judiciary. It's a funny British fudge so that we can say we have independent policing and courts. Everyone knows they take orders from the Home Secretary in practice. Right? So she's gone through all those motions, but it's not that long ago, is it, Brian, since Mike reported on this programme that the Home Office, the same lady, Suella Braverman, had written to the chief constables with the same buzzwords that the interviewer there was coming out with, context. It's a very fashionable thing to say these days. You can make anything seem to be anything else if you say context, provide more context. She's saying in a missive to the chief constables, which has gone on before this interview, in some contexts, chanting from the river to the sea or flying a Palestinian flag will be hate. And then she gives the clincher at the end. She says, zero tolerance to anti-Semitism. That's the order again. The chief constables will do and will trickle down their forces. That's if they know what they're good for, is what's good for them, will implement the arrest first, ask questions later, as seen with very peaceful protesters at the coronation this summer. The same British fudge is going on there. Palestine will be free from the river to the sea. What do you do with such a quote? You can't get inside the people's minds who say it. That's the core issue. And I'm afraid this is just the latest and most contentious example of how the whole Western world, particularly English and Scottish courts, now are saying we determine context. And that goes back to the stage of arrest. Never mind what the Public Order Act 1986 or equivalent outside England and Wales says about there must be grounds for an observer of reasonable firmness to take great umbrage and feel very upset. No, that all goes by the board. And in the case of the David Icke hearing with the Dutch courts, they're even more knee-jerk. They say it doesn't matter what you meant by it. It's, we have to protect the people who say boo-hoo easily. And that philosophy's come through to the whole of the West now. And Britain is particularly disingenuous in how it applies it, because our legislation is very strict on paper, and our jurisprudence on how to interpret that legislation. You have to show that you have an evil mind, a mens rea, to be prosecuted even to be threatened with arrest by constables. But no, in practice, if you fly a Russian flag or a Palestinian flag, they'll come down on you with the postmodern stuff about context. So little time for it, really. Not a bad woman, but in a bad system.
And I would imagine she's being put under huge pressure to follow the diktat from above. Now,